My name is Christy Murphy, and I am the Vice President of Customer Experience and Performance here at Southern California Edison. A couple of housekeeping items while participants are still trickling in. If you are interested in adding closed captioning, please click on the three dots found in the top right of the toolbar. In the drop-down menu, select Turn on Live Captions. So that's if you would like to see the words while we're speaking, you do have the option to add closed captioning. Again, the way to do that is click on the three dots found at the top right of the toolbar, and then in that drop-down menu, you can select Turn on Live Captions. Please note that the Q&A feature is going to be available for comments and questions throughout the presentation. If you wish to ask a question, please click the Q&A icon at the top of your screen and select Ask a Question and type in your answer. We will answer relevant questions during the Q&A portion of the program. So again, if you want to ask a question, click the Q&A icon at the top of your screen and select Ask a Question. You can then type in your question and we will aim to answer any relevant questions during the Q&A portion of the program. Another feature is you can also upvote questions that you wish to have answered. So if you see a question that you like, you can click the arrow that's on that question and that will upvote it. And what we will plan to do is, depending on the amount of questions we get, we will aim to answer the most popular questions first or the most upvoted questions first, so that we make sure that we are helping address as many questions as possible. Due to the volume of attendees and questions, the raise your hand feature will not be utilized during this meeting. So let me repeat that. We will not be using the raise your hand feature during this meeting. We will be taking the questions through the chat, given the volume of people that we are expecting to attend tonight. So again, if you want to ask a question, click the Q&A icon and you can type in your question. We will be answering any relevant questions this evening, and we look forward to being able to answer your questions and help everyone understand what the Wildfire presence looks like this year, as well as our PSPS program. Before we get going, I'm going to briefly turn things over to my colleague Karina, who is going to share the housekeeping rules. She'll repeat those, but do so in Spanish. So with that, next slide, please, and Karina, take it away.
Thank you, Christy. Buenas tardes, gracias por acompañarnos hoy. Voy a compartir unos anuncios antes de empezar. La junta de hoy está siendo grabada. Por favor, tenga en cuenta que la función de preguntas y respuestas está disponible para sus comentarios y...
I mentioned last year that we thought PSPS would be more extreme than it was in 2024. Last year, we were actually lucky. If you'll recall, we had early rain in October and November, and that essentially ended the season. This year, we have the same concerns. We could have more PSPS events than we did in 2025, and even more than in 2024, given that we've made some adjustments to our PSPS methodology. So we're hosting this virtual meeting to answer questions and share resources that hopefully you will find helpful on how to prepare. If you have questions, please type them in the chat and we'll be able to answer them during the Q&A portion of this presentation. We've left plenty of time for Q&A at the end of our presentation. As you'll see in the agenda that's on the screen today, we're joined today by subject matter experts who will share information about the conditions we closely monitor and evaluate when making PSPS decisions. We'll also update you on our efforts to strengthen the grid to reduce some of the PSPS impacts and share information about customer programs and resources. So let's get started with safety. We can go to the next slide. Safety is Edison's #1 priority, so we start every meeting with a safety moment. Today, I'd like to speak with you about safety near downed power lines. If you encounter downed wires, stay away and call 911. Always assume that downed power wires are energized and dangerous. They will often look very, very innocent, but they are please assume that they're energized and dangerous. Stay clear of anything that might be contacting the downed wires, including fences, trees, cables, phone lines, and the ground. We appreciate your help as you see any downed power lines, whether it be through a car accident or in the neighborhood. Please don't touch it, stay away, and call 911. With that, I'm going to turn it over to CAL FIRE Chief Sean Fairbanks to share some lessons learned on preparedness from a county and state perspective. Chief Fairbanks, Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending. Sean Fairbanks, Deputy Chief of Utility Wildfire Mitigation, CAL FIRE. Tonight you'll hear about PSPS, but I want to thank Southern California Edison for the opportunity to also talk about preparedness for the upcoming wildfire season. Currently we have fires in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Riverside, and San Diego, and fire season is here with limited snowpack. Our larger complex incidents may be here earlier in the summer than normal. We can prepare early and increase our personal safety and the survivability chances of our homes with defensible space and home hardening. What is defensible space and why is it so important? It protects life by making the structure more survivable during advancing wildfire. It provides firefighters a safe area to work to defend structures during fires, and reduces the chances of a wildfire entering a structure and reduces the chances of a structure fire becoming a wildfire. Next slide, please. Embers are the #1 cause of spread. And you'll see in this diagram, we have the 3 zones. The zone 0 is where we're trying to get fire-resistant plants in pots, anything that can, catch with an ember, have rock around that 5 feet, and closed eaves. That's a very important zone where the embers go against the buildings to protect that. Then you'll see the 5 to 30 feet, your zone 1. That's with the mowed annual grasses. Our ladder fields are removed, and we have tree spacing within that area. And then you'll have zone 2. That's the 30-foot to 100. Ladder fields are completely removed. You have a larger tree spacing, and that goes to 100 feet on your property or to your property line wherever you can get. And that's when we say that communities work together, because you may not have the 100 feet, but if everyone works together, we can have a good defensible space. And once a structure becomes involved, it is now continuous fuel like brush. So that's why we want to mitigate that problem. Next slide, please. So in this picture, you see ordinary residential structure. That's the home hardening. That's when we talk, we're going to have fire resistant components as in sidings, composite roofs, decking, enclosed eaves, and remove that roof debris that may have been from the fall and over the winter. And then around that structure, you also want to make sure that you have the safety. We all have, our adjacent buildings, our glass or sheds. Make sure that those are also hardened for wildfire. If you can, park your vehicles away, your boats, your RVs, any combustible materials as in firewood, just to make that survivability of your home have a better chance. Again, if this is done adjacent to defensible space, with home hardening, it increases your home chances of survival. Next slide. With communities making mitigation efforts and utilities hardening their systems and mitigating other power lines, we all have a collective effort of making our communities safer and more wildfire resilient. Just like with PSPS activations, plan ahead, and you also plan ahead for wildfire. Items you can take quickly, your pets, know your escape routes, keep informed on fire status, and act quickly and evacuated when asked to do so. I have posted here readyforwildfire.org has a lot of good information for this upcoming wildfire season. Again, I'd like to appreciate everyone for attending. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Fairbanks, for joining us this evening. We appreciate that. I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Tom Merlinski, fire science expert here at Southern California Edison. So, Tom?
All right. Well, thank you, Christy, and good evening to everybody. My name is Tom Merlinski. I'm the fire scientist with Southern California Edison, and I want to talk to you a little bit about our upcoming fire season, what we can expect, and then talk a little bit about our weather forecasting and our and sort of how we do PSPS with some of the tools that we have available. To talk a little bit about what we can expect for this upcoming fire season, I want to go back a little bit and give you just a little bit of context leading up to this year's fire season. So as Christy mentioned earlier, we had a lot of rain early in the season. We had some big rains in October and then again in November and December, which really just shut down the whole fire season pretty early. It really truncated our fall fire season when we normally get those strong winds in October and November and even into December. We didn't have a lot of wind last fall, and again, those early rains really kind of just cut off the season and again truncated our fall fire season, which was good news, right? That really cut down on the number of PSPS events that we could have had during the fall. Next slide, please. Okay, so with that in mind, we did have a lot of rain, as you recall, again in not only in the fall, but even spilling into January and February. This year, we had a lot of heavy rain across the area. We did have some pretty big gaps between our precipitation events, but when it did rain, it really rained hard, and we did get a lot of precipitation. Going into this this coming fire season, going into the summer, and as we go into the fall, there's a lot of wild cards in play here. One of them is the potential to have more thunderstorm activity across the area this summer. And really, when we get thunderstorm activity, it's mostly affecting our mountains and deserts. It typically doesn't affect our coastal regions very often. So that's a big wild card for us, that the potential for those thunderstorms to be more frequent across the mountains and deserts. There may also be the potential for a tropical system to come up into the Southern California area later in the summer or early in the fall. So there's a little bit of higher probability this year of that occurring. Again, this is months away, but that is certainly one of the wild cards that we're looking at. Also, it is going to be hotter this summer. A lot of our long-range computer models are indicating hotter conditions across much of California here, Southern California as well, this summer. Because we had so much precipitation this past winter, we really don't have much in the way of drought conditions occurring, although we're seeing some drier conditions starting to return to portions of our desert areas, portions of the Sierra, and mostly across Northern California. But we don't expect any severe or extreme drought conditions to return this year. We do think it'll obviously get a little drier as we head through the summer and into the fall, but we don't see any extreme or severe drought conditions returning anytime soon. So that part's good news for us. The bad news here is that our vegetation, because we haven't really had a lot of rain since the end of February, right? We had a really wet winter, but then after February, things really dried out significantly, and so our vegetation is drier than normal right now. In fact, we're running a good 4 to 6 weeks ahead of schedule. In other words, our vegetation right now is about as dry as it normally is would be in like the end of June. So, and we're starting to see fire activity increasing across the area. This week has been a very busy week. We've had quite a bit of fire activity throughout Southern California, even into parts of Central California, and that's been a result of just the drier than normal conditions. It hasn't really taken a lot of extreme weather to get these fires going, and so we've seen just based on the dry fuels, we've seen a ramp up in the fire activity. So that's sort of maybe a taste of what's to come later this summer and into the fall. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to fire activity this fall, just because it's so far off, and it's really dependent on how much wind we get later on, and again in October and November, which coincides with the time when when the fuels are sort of at their driest, and that's just really too far off to determine how much wind we might have in the fall. So again, a lot of uncertainty, and then the timing of when precipitation might return to the area at a more frequent basis. Again, there is a lot of uncertainty around that. You've probably heard about El Nino returning to the area. That could lead to another wet winter, but there's a lot of uncertainty around that as well. So as we continue to dry out with our vegetation, again, we're starting to already see fires ramping up here. Anytime we get, I would say from now onward, anytime we get into more of a windier pattern, we're going to have the potential for PSPS events. So we're really on the brink of seeing our vegetation really supporting significant fire growth on the area. So again, we see some wind. We get these wind events that could be occurring. We're going to have potential for PSPS. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to talk for just a couple more minutes here. I want to about some of the tools that we have at our disposal to help with our PSPS events. And there's really two things to really think about. One is weather forecasting, and the other is weather observation. So when we think of weather forecasting, it's projecting what we think weather conditions are going to be like in the future. And when I say in the future, really for the next 5 to 7 days. The weather forecasts help us identify when we might have a PSPS event coming in the next few days. And that's extremely helpful for us to really try to dial that in well so that we can notify you days ahead of time, right? We want to give you as much advance notice as we possibly can. So we use very high resolution weather forecasts to make sure that we can get those forecasts right. And so what you've seen on the screen here is two different, it's the same weather model that we use to forecast the weather, but the one on the left is sort of, you see a lot of kind of a blocky weather or blocky pattern here, and on the right there's a lot more clarity. And we used really the forecasts on the right. There's a lot more detail in those forecasts, and again, that helps us to really get the weather event dialed in. One of the questions that keeps coming up is what's the difference between our forecasts and the forecasts that come out of the National Weather Service. Sometimes when we have a PSPS event, the Weather Service doesn't have a red flag warning out. And the reason for that is because the Weather Service is forecasting for the general public. They're forecasting for these large areas while we're forecasting for really these small localized areas, and again, we need a lot more granularity in our forecasts, and sometimes they're going to be different. Again, just because of the different audience and the areas that we're forecasting for. Next slide, please. Okay, and finally, I want to talk just a little bit about our weather stations. So I talked about weather forecast, right? Projecting the forecast, the weather in the future. And then we have weather stations. We have a lot of weather stations that are, we have actually multiple weather stations that are on every circuit that's in our high fire risk area. We have more than one weather station that's on our circuits in our high fire risk areas. They look like this here in the picture. These are used to, this is to monitor real-time weather conditions. So we're not talking about forecasting, we're talking about real-time, what's happening right now. And so those weather stations monitor wind speed, relative humidity, temperature every 10 minutes. And we're using these weather stations to make those de-energization decisions. So to turn the power off, we're going to use the weather station information. So to identify a PSPS event, we're using weather forecast, and to actually turn the power off, we're using these weather stations. They're really, and so you might be, if you're driving around, you see one of these weather stations, there really should be a reminder that we're looking out for your safety and the protection of your community. So I'll stop there, and actually I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jude Snyder. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Sorry, Jude, real quick, I'm going to jump in. We've received a couple comments that some people are having a hard time seeing the slides. If that's the case, the best thing to do is log out and rejoin. This session is being recorded, so rest assured that if you miss anything, you'll be able to see it. But that's the best way. The slides are working, so if you are one of the users that is having a difficult time seeing the slides, exit, rejoin, and you should be able to see the slides. So sorry, Jude, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you, Christy. So I wanted to take a moment to say I work in our business resiliency group at SCE, and Tom Rolinski, who just spoke, is our chief fire scientist. We have 3 fire scientists, 10 meteorologists, a seismologist, and we actually also manage 900 of our colleagues who are our emergency response team, and they obviously have other jobs. We don't keep them in waiting, but everyone is trained in exercise. So when the emergency happens, we have a team ready to go to work. And I just thought it was worth mentioning that up front. So this slide is a little grim. This is based on CAL FIRE statistics, what wildfire seasons look like. And this is essentially why we're doing PSPS. And you'll see the dramatic rise. This is structures lost. You'll see the absolute dramatic rise in the last 10 years. There's similar CAL FIRE statistics that will show acreage lost or deadliness. They're a little less dramatic. One of the reasons this is so dramatic is we're putting houses in places where they're in the wildland urban interface, or we're seeing a lot more structure loss. And we've also had urban, we call them urban conflagrations. I'll talk about it a little more later, but where in Santa Rosa, Pacific Palisades, Altadena, Lahaina, where we're really seeing wildfires are in communities as opposed to the old forest fires that we used to have. So this is essentially the why are we in this place? What's different? Why didn't we ever do this before? And the answer is because the fires just didn't look this way before, and we're looking for how we can how to keep safe, how not to cause fires, quite frankly. So that's kind of where we are. I'm going to move to the next slide. So this is a lot of words on this slide, but I guess the point here is we have a very defined system based on the work from Tom Rolinski and those meteorologists to understand when there is a threat that our utility equipment could be part of a fire. And it requires 3 things. It requires dry vegetation, which Tom talked about, low humidity, and wind. Without the winds, there is no the fire. There might be wildfires like there are today, but without that combination of wind and dry vegetation, they wouldn't be utility related wildfires, so we wouldn't be turning off power. So that's the basic when we do it. We establish a baseline criteria for every circuit or sometimes circuit segment in our system. And we have about 1,000 circuits that are in our high fire risk area. We establish a wind threshold, which is the forecast wind speed that would trigger a PSPS event. And I'm kind of sharing this. I'm going to kind of go through what this means on the next slide. And then there's a trigger, which is when we will de-energize circuits. And we have a team and they're working around the clock. And when there are customers who are de-energized, they're sitting 24/7 looking at wind speeds. And those wind speeds are coming in from those weather stations that Tom showed you on the previous slide. Next slide. So I want to talk through what a PSPS is going to look like to you when we call it. 4 to 7 days in advance, we're starting to see a weather pattern that is looking significantly as though it's going to bring in a high fire risk weather event. 3 days out, we will send a notification. Actually, it's between 3 and 2 days out. And if you are in, we say in scope for a PSPS event, we'll send you a notification that there might be a weather event. And we'll say it'll start in the morning, afternoon, or evening of the 3 days hence or 2.5 days hence. And that's essentially prepare. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to turn off your power, because we're still trying not to turn off power. The idea in our ops room is to try and keep power on. And so we only turn off power if we really think it's necessary for community safety. And that's the bottom line. We continue to update our customers. And then we send a notification, kind of a heavy warning, 1 to 4 hours before shutoff. And this is when we are, I wouldn't say sure, but higher, much higher possibility that we will be shutting off your power. And when you're in that 1 to 4 hour, we're not going to continue sending it, because we used to send it all the time, and people are getting this every 4 hours for 24 hours, and a lot of people just kind of cried uncle. So once you're in that high warning, know that we could turn off your power at any time. One of the reasons that we have this long process is to make sure that our customers are prepared. Have ice in your freezer. There'll be more. There are more things that my colleague Rose is going to go into, but this is the time to get prepared. Although know that your power might not go off, so you can kind of keep your fingers crossed for that. We'll shut off power, and we'll send an authorization notice that we're shutting off power. Usually the authorization comes and the power goes off in around 10 minutes. And then we send another one when the event has ended, the winds have calmed down, and we're starting to restore. Now it takes a while, because you saw that from our safety message. What we're looking for is, if there is a wire down like that one in our safety message, we need to fix it, and we need to see it. So we need to see all the lines, every foot, every mile of line is inspected before we can actually turn the power back on. And this can take up to 8 hours. And it can even take longer if this happens late in the day and we're going to need daylight to get in there. So it's not an instantaneous thing. Then we actually send another notice when the power's been restored. And although this might seem self-evident when your lights are on, and we send you a notice saying your lights are on, if you are not in the residence, then or if it's not a residence, you might need to know that. And then the other thing is, if your power doesn't go back on, please call the outage in, because it means that there's some secondary problem. Don't wait, because chances are the message was not in error, but that there's a continuing problem. I want to talk a little bit about what's not a PSPS notification. These PSPS notifications are required. They're emergency notifications, and you can't turn them off. But if your power just goes out because there's a windstorm and we're waiting to turn your power off, but it actually goes out, you wouldn't get a PSPS notification. You could go to our website and you can look, and it'll show you what kind of outage you have. And you will get a notification if you're signed up for them, but after the power goes out, but not in advance. And the third kind of major one is a repair notification, and you would get that if we're planning, and we start like 10 days out on those, say we're going to be doing repair on your line. And again, you can opt out. We're trying not to opt people out of those, but if you're not getting these notifications, check your customer account and make sure that you're opted in for notifications. Then sort of the last thing I'm going to say about notifications is you can get them, and I think Rose is going to go more into it, but you can get them via text, via voice, meaning we leave you a message, not a live person, and via email. And we recommend that for most customers, a text message, because you can turn it off in the middle of the night. So we're not telling you annoyingly at 2 in the morning that your power's back on if you don't want to hear it at 2 in the morning. If you're a business, we recommend email, especially if you have multiple locations, because you can filter those. And we recommend voice for like the elderly who don't want to have anything to do potentially with text or emails. But know that you have that ability to modulate how you get our notifications. Next slide. So I realized that there's actually something missing from this slide here, which talks about what our teams are doing in the field. But I wanted, before I go to the field, explain that we have people working, as I said, around the clock. There are people looking at what's going on, phone, text, meeting, in a 24/7 meeting, to make sure that we're looking at problems. If there's some kind of urgency, those messages come into us and we deal with them. So we're not sort of dead to the world between when we turn your power off and when we turn it back on. Up to 5 days before the event, you might see crews in your neighborhood. Those resources will be looking for potential hazards that could be a danger or a fire risk. If we can fix it in those 5 days, we will do it. If we can't, then it might mean that we're going to be faster to call to turn off power in the neighborhood. 2 hours prior and during the event, we will also be in the neighborhood. And again, we're looking at conditions. Our field observers actually have portable weather stations. They're on long sticks, and they can hold them up and they can look to see if the wind is specifically stronger or not as strong in a exact location, and that they'll call that in if that's pertinent. And then they will assess damage and call damage in. And then I talked a little already about restoration patrol. We have these crews stationed somewhere on the circuit when we're ready to call the event, when the wind has died down, and they start somewhere and they move out. You know, it's a spider web, our circuitry, and so they work as quickly as they can, but you know, some customers will get re-energized earlier because they're closer to where the restoration patrol is starting, and some will take longer. And I do want to announce, and we're very happy about this, that we have a drone pilot program this year, which should help us be far more efficient, especially in those areas that we can only inspect during daylight that are rough terrain. There's some areas we can only inspect by hiking in or by helicopter, and the drones are going to help us there. Let me move to the next slide. That's sort of it on PSPS actions. I want to tell you, though, that we're doing other things to try and mitigate impacts. We have covered conductor, which is, you can see kind of from the picture here, it's literally our wires are covered so that things that fall into them won't cause a spark. And this helps raise, in some cases, the wind speeds that are for our PSPS shut off wind speeds. Protective devices and settings can respond more quickly to sparks. Fire-resistant poles and wraps, and anytime a pole is damaged in a fire, it's replaced with a fire-resistant or wrapped pole. And we're doing some targeted undergrounding. We've done 90 miles since 2021. And we're also hardening our transmission line. So those are some of the other things we're doing besides and before PSPS. Next slide. We also do a lot of vegetation management. We inspect 1.6 million trees using LiDAR satellite technology to enhance inspections and to make sure we're capturing the geography by all of our poles and wires. And we remove hazard trees when we think they could fall into the lines. You can see the diagram there of the 12-foot distance that we're looking for, both vertically and horizontally. And we do this in advance of the season to try and mitigate where we and reduce risk from for our lines. And let me move to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the question we get most, which is, why is my power out when it isn't windy? Or there's a corollary, which I'll get to, which is, why is my power out when my neighbor's isn't? This is an actual circuit, and on our line, and you'll see that we have a substation in the brown area. The brown area is a high fire risk area. It's up on a mountain. You can't really tell it from this picture. And then in that red circle, there's an undergrounded neighborhood. So new homes, completely undergrounded, but their circuitry runs from that substation. And we have to turn that off. I think we've only turned it off once, but we've had to turn it off because there was a danger of fire. And to protect the community in the brown, there was no way to get power to that neighborhood in the red circle that was beyond it. So that's the answer to why is my power when it isn't windy, which is it's windy on your circuit. And those weather stations that Tom Rolinski talked about are showing us that there's high winds along the circuit, although they might not be in that neighborhood. Next slide. Next. Oh. Very quickly, maybe that was a hint. Very quickly, this is, why does my neighbor have power when I don't? And you'll see that the inset orange house is on the edge there. The yellow area is high fire risk area. And there's wires, the blue wires are energized, but this customer is on the, is de-energized because they are on the line that is in the high fire risk area. And there's no way to keep them energized without turning off the power to those areas that are in the high fire risk area. So that's sort of the answer there. Frustrating. And we do look, when we can, we switch customers. So if that blue line connected to the orange line, there might be a way to switch the whole segment so that we can avoid that de-energization. And we have switching plans, I think 700 or something. So we do that when we can, but we can't always do it. That's it for me. I'm going to pass this to Rosa Perea, my colleague, who's going to talk a lot more about our mitigations and resiliency programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rosa Perea, and I am the Senior Manager for our PSPS Customer Experience team. I also serve as a Customer Care Branch Director when we activate an incident management team for PSPS and other emergencies. We do know that PSPS and other outages are a hardship to our communities, especially individuals with access and functional needs. And we also understand that losing power for any amount of time is disruptive and inconvenient. So today I want to share some important information on emergency preparedness and resiliency planning, as well as some SCE programs that can help mitigate the impacts of PSPS. I'm sure some of you have heard about these programs before, and that's great, but we do want to take this opportunity to make sure that you are aware of the programs that are available to help improve your resiliency. Next slide. Okay, thank you. So more than 1/4 of our service territory is in high fire risk area. And as climate change and drought make wildfires a year-round concern, being prepared for emergencies and potential power outages, including PSPS, is more important than ever. Hopefully, some of the information on this slide is familiar to you. So I'm just going to share some key steps to help you prepare. First and foremost, you need to make sure you build an emergency kit. Keeping essential supplies like food, water, first aid, and batteries readily accessible and tailored to your household needs, including those of any vulnerable family members and pets. We encourage you to make and practice your emergency plan. So ensure everyone in your household knows what to do during an emergency, including evacuation steps, utility shutoffs, and maintaining either half a tank or half a charge in your vehicles in case you need to evacuate. Staying informed and connected is also important. So we encourage you to sign up for PSPS alerts, monitor outages through SCE's outage map, and ensure that you have backup communication options like battery-powered radios in case other communication channels go out. And finally, make sure you're prepared for any power disruptions. So consider backup power options like portable batteries or generators, and leverage SCE rebates and preparedness resources to stay resilient. And I'll cover some of those in a few minutes. And if you haven't built an emergency kit or made a plan, we strongly encourage you to do so as soon as possible. You can find helpful resources or download a preparedness kit checklist that has some of the information on this slide by visiting sce.com/be-prepared. Next slide. Okay. We've been talking a lot about notifications, and that's because it's way important to make sure that your information's up to date in our system so we can send you timely notifications. So I know Jude covered notifications timeline for PSPS a couple minutes ago, and those notifications typically do start 3 days before a potential PSPS and continue through the restoration process. And to ensure that everybody stays informed during PSPS, we provide notifications to our customers by email, text, and voice calls based on what customers indicate as their preference on their accounts. Address level alerts are also available for non-account holders so they can stay informed. So this is very helpful for parents who have children that go to schools on a different circuit than the one their home is on. Renters that are not SCE account holders for the residents they live in, or for those of us that have family in high fire risk areas and just want to stay informed of possible PSPS conditions. And you can sign up for address-specific alerts at SCEPSPS.com. And we do encourage all of our customers to visit the SCE Customer Preference Center to make sure that your contact info is up to date and that you indicate how you want to receive those notifications during outages. And we also have an interactive consolidated outage map that incorporates PSPS outages, and that's at sce.com/outage map. Some recent updates to our outage map include making sure that information is loading faster and is more focused and accessible for customers. And then the view and search options have become more customer friendly, which includes making it easier for customers to report an outage that's not already showing on the map, and then improving the experience for customers who are searching for power outages for addresses that are not actually served by SCE. The outage map also shows the locations for resources that are available during PSPS, which include community resource centers, community crew vehicles, EV charging stations, hotel assistance, and food banks. Next slide. Okay, and speaking of those resources, we have established 116 community resource centers across our service area, with 9 of them being designed to stay fully operational, even when surrounding areas are without power. And at these locations, you can charge your devices, keep medications at safe temperatures, access the help you need with our staff that's ready to assist you, including translation services in over 120 languages and American Sign Language. And we also recognize that not everyone can easily get to a resource center, especially in rural or hard to reach areas. So that is why we have 8 community crew vehicles that provide the same essential services as the community resource centers. And we've also created 8 resiliency zones that are strategically chosen locations where we have installed backup generators so that businesses that you depend on most can keep operating even during PSPS. And we do know that these resources alone do not eliminate the hardship of a power shutoff, but they do represent our commitment to making sure you're not left without support during PSPS. Next slide. Okay, and next, I do want to share some of the additional support for our customers that have access and functional needs and the additional outreach we do to them during a PSPS. We offer targeted support for schools and senior care facilities that have been frequently impacted by PSPS to help ensure continuity for some of our most vulnerable populations. We also partner with community-based organizations to increase awareness of the medical baseline program and promote enrollments, as well as deliver direct assistance to customers with access and functional needs. These organizations also provide referrals to additional services, and we work closely with local food banks to support food replacement during PSPS. We also have a great partnership with WW.One California, who supports customers with access and functional needs with emergency preparedness, transportation, lodging, food assistance, and other services. Customers with access and functional needs can dial 211 during a PSPS, text the word prepare to 211-211, or use the 211 Now Care Coordination app for personalized support and resource referrals. And we do recommend that you reach out to 211 during your emergency preparedness planning process so that that can help mitigate any concerns and ensure that you have support and resources that you may need before a PSPS. And our chat moderator will be adding some of those links in the chat if they haven't already. And we do encourage you to use the link to schedule your personal care coordination appointment. And the sooner you get that scheduled, the better, please. Also, enrolling in the medical baseline program provides customers who use life support devices with access to backup battery assistance. So if you or someone you know hasn't taken advantage of that program, we ask that you enroll. And we're also putting the links to the program in the chat. And I do want to share that if we're not able to confirm initial PSPS notifications for our medical baseline program or critical care customers, that we do dispatch a field service representative to do a physical door knock to make sure that they're notified of the pending PSPS conditions. So this is something that I have personally overseen in my role as a customer care branch director during PSPS. And we're also continuing to improve accessibility by incorporating more American Sign Language into our marketing, videos, and PSPS notifications. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned this earlier, and we do have several backup power programs and rebates available. First is the Critical Care Battery Program, which provides free batteries augmented with a solar panel to medical baseline customers that may be impacted by PSPS. We have a team that assesses the customer's needs and then delivers the battery solution directly to their home. Next is our in-event battery loan program, and that provides critical support for customers with access and functional needs who may not qualify for a critical care battery program. Those customers impacted by PSPS can receive a temporary battery loan to power any essential medical or assistive devices during a PSPS. And SC partners with WW.One California, who then coordinates with our battery loan contractors to manage the delivery and the pickup of those batteries from the customers' homes. We also have rebates for portable generators for residential and small commercial customers that may be impacted by PSPS. The rebate is it's higher for customers on the California alternative rates for energy program referred to as CARE, the Family Electric Rate Assistance program referred to as FERA, and our medical baseline allowance. And you'll see the sub-bullets there. We have a $200 base backup generator rebate with up to $800 for customers that are enrolled in the CARE FERA or medical baseline program, and that is limited to 1 per customer account. And there's also up to $200 rebate for qualifying portable power stations, and those are limited to 5 per customer account. We encourage you to visit marketplace.sce.com to view the qualifying backup generators and portable power stations. And since 2020, SCE has issued over 20,000 rebates for portable power stations and generators and distributed over 27,000 backup batteries to medical baseline customers who may have been impacted by PSPS. And there's a lot of information here too, and I know I've referenced a lot of links, so we do have a slide at the end of the presentation that contains links to helpful resources and other programs. So we encourage you to take a look at that when you receive that from us and share it with your friends, family, and neighbors. Next slide. Okay, and then finally, I do want to touch briefly on backup generators and their role in your resiliency plans. Backup generators and having a plan to safely fuel and operate them can be an important part of preparing for outages. We encourage you to always work with a licensed electrician to make sure that you have the proper equipment and that it is safely installed. It's also important to understand the safety risks, especially when you're working with fuel sources like gas, propane, or diesel, often in challenging conditions. So make sure that you have proper safety protocols in place. And for your own awareness, if you aren't aware, there are 2 main types of generators. The first is a portable generator that can power individual appliances. And the second is the one that's interconnected directly to your electric panel using a transfer switch. And if you're installing one of those, then you do need to submit an interconnection application with SCE. And generators must meet electrical codes and be disconnected from the grid during outages to prevent backfeeding, which can create serious safety risks for utility crews that are working on power lines. Finally, generator size and cost depend on your electrical load And so that can often be reduced by improving energy efficiency in your home or focusing on powering just essential load during an outage. So with that, I want to thank you again for joining us tonight, and I will pass it back to Christy for Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Rosa. Appreciate and Chief Fairbanks. Thank everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We now are going to dive into some Q&A, a couple comments before we do that. First, thank you all for your attention throughout the presentation. This is our opportunity to dive deeper into the topics that we discussed and hopefully get your questions answered. We now invite you. I know there have been several questions that have come through already, which is great. Please click on that Q&A bubble at the top. You can type in your question, or if there's a question that's already been asked that you like, you can click the up arrow on that question and that will upvote it so that we can touch on the most popular questions first. We welcome your questions as they relate to today's topics around PSPS, recognizing that many of you are here today to better understand how to prepare. We kindly ask that questions remain in that area, as we'll not be we don't have the time to be able to respond to all topics, so we want to try to stick to the PSPS preparedness so that we can answer questions for those of you that have joined to learn more. Again, please feel free to review the questions, upvote any that you like. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so if you miss a question, we will have, it'll be recorded. You'll be sent the recording if you have RSVP for the session. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to look at the most upvoted and then start working my way through there. So we will start with, okay, so the first one I'm going to give to my colleague Raphael. This is from Ruthie Brock. Why does SCE not clear brush on their own SCE owner property around Vincent substation? So Raphael is with our veg management organization. So Raphael, I'll ask you to come on and take this question. Okay, Raphael. Okay, we'll go to the next question and hopefully we can get him back on. So the next one is from Jacqueline. Says, since this chat has been disabled, I'm sending this request through Q&A. Please provide the public with a detailed description of SCE's new PSPS decision process. So I'll have Jude answer this. I think the PSPS decision making is relatively the same. The thresholds that we're using are different. We calibrate every year based on the fire conditions and the precipitation levels. But Jude, let me see if you can add to this if you have more to add to this question.
Yeah, hey, Christy, you dropped out a little for me. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So this is from Jacqueline Iyer. It says, since the chat has been disabled, she's sending this Q&A. Please provide the public with a detailed description of SCE's new PSPS decision process.
It must be my internet here, but let me answer what I think the question is, which is we do update our standards. We look every year to understand whether we are properly mitigating for risk. And we publish that in a technical paper. The technical paper was updated this spring and it's available on our website. You can Google for it, but we're going to also put the link in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Jude. It looks like Raphael is back. So Raphael, Ruthie Brock had a question. Why does SCE not clear brush around their own SCE owner property around Vincent substation?
Thank you for listening. Again, Rafael Lopez with Vegetation Management, Operations Manager here. And we typically do trim our brush around our substations. We have a 50-foot buffer that we have to maintain per the Public Resource Code 4291. But we do have some ad hoc requests that might come in. And if you have any concerns, you can definitely reach out and we can send one of our subject matter experts to address the issue there and schedule it out. But again, we do clear our brush around their substations twice a year.
Great, Raphael. And if they wanted to send an email, would it be safetrees@sce.com? Is that the email address?
Yes. So if you have any concerns, and this can include the brush and even some tree trimming activities as well, you can go on to our website and just search Safe Trees, and they could take us directly to our site. And at the bottom, it has a way to contact us, and you can send us a direct message through there. Or there is I believe a 1-800 number that you can call us as well to submit your concerns there.
Okay, thank you so much, Raphael. The next question is from Mark, and Tom, I'll give this one to you. I've seen articles on the internet about a very strong El Nino condition. Can you translate what that implies for fire season?
Yes, great question about El Nino. So let me try to dive into this a little bit here. First of all, when we talk about El Nino, or sometimes we talk about La Nina conditions, that is all referring to the sea surface temperatures across the equatorial Pacific region, which is really the area in the Pacific Ocean that stretches from South America over towards Indonesia, kind of straddling the equator. So that's the area that we sort of focus on, and we look at whether temperatures are warmer or cooler than normal. And when they're warmer than normal, that translates to an El Nino event. And when they're cooler than normal, that translates to a La Nina event. So there's been a lot of talk in the media about a super El Nino that is expected to develop this year. What does that mean for us? Well, first of all, with El Nino events, typically when we get, now this doesn't always happen, but typically when we get a strong El Nino, like we had in 1983 or 82, 83, and when we had the strong El Nino in 97, 98, those events, and those would be classified as super El Ninos, they resulted in a lot of precipitation across Southern California. But we've had some other strong El Nino events that resulted in below normal precipitation. I would say the tendency is for us to see a better than normal chance of having a wet winter with a El Nino, particularly a strong El Nino in place. So we're obviously watching how this is developing, and we're watching to see how it intensifies later this year, to what degree. And then we can kind of have a little bit better idea in terms of like if we're having a good chance of having a wet winter or maybe not. There was another question about how do the El Nino events affect Santa Ana wind events in the fall. That's a great question. El Nino events tend to diminish the frequency or reduce the frequency of Santa Ana wind events. So there's a kind of a little bit of a double-edged sword with El Nino events, because one is they tend to result in a delayed onset of wintertime precipitation, but they also tend to reduce, not always, but tend to reduce the frequency of the number of Santa Ana wind events that we have in the fall. So one aspect is it could lengthen the fall fire season, but then on the other hand, we may not have that many wind events in the fall to be concerned about. So a lot of complexities there. I hope I answered your questions on El Nino.
Thanks, Tom. He's a fire scientist and expert on our team. So thank you, Tom. The next question is from Diana Luxembourg. It's a long question, so I'll try to touch on what I think are the main points. Question about how much money we have spent. Why do you focus so much on downlines when most people are aware, and waste time on your automated messages? So we try to send automated messages to communicate what's happening, especially when a PSPS event is coming. So our goal is for that to be helpful. Next part of her question was, how much money have you spent on community affairs and other actions instead of hardening our grid? We have invested across the board hundreds of millions of dollars of wildfire mitigation and support that's publicly filed with the commission through our wildfire management plan. So all of that is public information. Why does the fire station have batteries? Oops, sorry, Jen. Why does the fire station have batteries for when they lose power and customers who pay for electricity do not? Rosa spent some time talking about opportunities for customers to get batteries, especially those who have medical or AFN needs. We want to make sure that you're supported. So let me see if I can touch on some other components of this, because I want to make sure we get to some of the other questions. Why have you changed? Why have you changed the wind tiers to lower ones so that Three Rivers lost power when there are no winds? I think Jude mentioned this, that at times it may feel like, gosh, my area doesn't have wind, but that community may be connected to a circuit that does have wind. And so we have to look at the whole circuit as we make those decisions. And the thresholds are different based on the circuit and the conditions. So we're trying to improve that in terms of being able to sectionalize our circuits to impact less customers, but it's a continuous effort. Are you using AI to determine when to shut off power instead of using aging intelligence? There are a number of tools that we use to determine when we need to shut off power. So it's a combination of AI, historical information, forecasted weather. And then there's one more part to this question that I'm going to ask Tom to come back on and speak to. And it's about suppression and how suppression can, or, what is it, the full suppression this year for wildfires per the feds. So shouldn't that lower the real risk of fire? So Tom, if you can take this last portion of the question, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. So suppression is certainly does, when we have full suppression in play, that certainly does help reduce the risk of wildfires, but it doesn't eliminate the risk. We still have that risk there. And the resources, the amount of resources that are available to the fire agencies is changes from day to day, just depending on how much fire activity is occurring throughout the region. And so that those resources are, the available resources vary from day to day to help fight fires. And the other thing I would mention here is that when we do have extreme weather conditions, like very strong winds, some of those resources like aircraft can be limited. Their effectiveness is limited in making airdrops that are targeted and successful. So there's a lot of things that can sort of hamper suppression efforts. I don't know if Chief Fairbanks is still on. If Chief Fairbanks wants to add anything to what I just said.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. And Diana, there was a lot to your question, so hopefully we touched on the relevant parts, and thank you for your question. Tom, I'm actually going to keep you on. The next couple questions I think are in your space. So the first one is from Angel Santana. How fast does the wind have to be to turn off power?
So that's a great question, and there's a lot of complexity around what wind speeds do we turn off the power. Again, it varies from circuit to circuit. I can't give you a specific wind speed because we have it depends on if there's any what we call the health of the circuit. So if we have a circuit that is where there are some issues with the circuit, we will de-energize at lower wind speeds. And we will de-energize at higher wind speeds if we have the circuit is covered with covered conductor, so that raises the wind speeds at which we de-energize. So again, really depends on the circuit, and it depends on, again, the health of the circuit. Is it a circuit that has covered conductor on it or not? So yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Tom. The next question actually is for you as well. It's about weather stations. So this is from Jacqueline Iyer. You say that you use weather stations to decide to cut power, but whenever I download wind data from your weather stations during PSPS events, winds are always low, less than 25 miles per hour. So exactly how are you using the weather station data, since your practice is to cut power when there is little to no wind?
Another great question. So again, thank you for that. We have multiple weather stations that represent our circuits and that go into the decision-making process to decide to de-energize a circuit. So if you're looking at one weather station and it may not show strong winds, that's likely a weather station that we're not using to make that de-energization decision. So again, there's multiple weather stations on each circuit. So we're looking at all of those different weather stations, and just because one may not be showing strong winds, there are others on that circuit that are, and we're de-energizing based upon if those wind speeds in real time are actually crossing our thresholds. we will de-energize the circuit based upon those real-time weather observations. But again, varies from weather station to weather station.
Great, thank you, Tom, and I appreciate you. In one of the slides, you show the specifics around the weather stations, and so that'll be in the slides that get emailed out afterwards. The next one is a comment from Therese. PSPS notifications are not timely, sometimes sent out after a shutoff starts, and updates are rarely updated. We've done quite a bit of work, Therese, over the past, especially 2 years, to become more timely in our PSPS notifications. I think Jude walked through the notification timeline. There are times where we are unable to send a notification because the wind changes unexpectedly. But know that this is an area of focus for us, because we do want to make sure that our customers are informed and can prepare when a PSPS event is forecasted. The next question is from Marino, and I'm going to give this one to Jude. How long have previous PS events lasted? Should we be prepared to plan for a few hours, a couple of days?
I'm really glad you asked that question, and the answer is, I'm going to be completely transparent with this answer, which is that the average PSPS event is 23 hours, which means, you know, going through the night and into the next day. Sometimes they're shorter, but I mentioned that length that it takes to inspect the wires afterwards, so that takes up to 8 hours. And sometimes they can be longer. During the extreme windstorms that we had in January 2025, we had customers out for much longer than that, which is why what Rosa said is so important. If you take anything away from today, it's please do look at what you can get for a portable generator, for backup battery, making emergency plans. Even just kind of knowing to put ice in your freezer, refrigerator to keep your food fresh longer. PSPS events are long, and we want to keep you safe.
Great, thank you, Jude. The next question is from Brett and Sandy. I'm going to have my colleague Raphael come back on to answer this one. Is there a service available to assist us with clearing brush around our homes and or on nearby areas? Raphael, can you help with this one?
Sure. And again, I believe if the vegetation or brush that's that you're concerned with doesn't impact our facilities, unfortunately, we do not have a program that can help out with that. I think maybe if you reach out to some of your local agencies, they might be able to help with something.
Great, thank you. Yeah, some of the local agencies, fire agencies, may be able to assist or provide resources, so thank you. Okay, the next question is from Luis Gomez, and I'm going to have Genevieve answer this one for us, Genevieve Cross. The question is, why is progress in undergrounding your grid so slow? Other utilities, gas and water, manage to not be above ground for the majority of the grid. Why isn't there a strong commitment from SCE to underground the majority of your grid? Genevieve, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Thanks, Christy. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Genevieve Cross. I'm on our distribution project management team, overseeing our targeted underground program. And so this is where we're undergrounding the distribution lines in the severe fire risk areas. The typical timeline for undergrounding is approximately 4 years. It's a significant effort where in a lot of these older communities, we're undergrounding the lines, and that means a relocation. So it takes around 2 to 3 months to identify the scope of where we want to underground it. It takes around 9 to 15 months to design that work, to acquire surveys, understand. A lot of these are relocations, so we're moving to the street. We have to acquire new land rights, do environmental review, a lot of times work with public agencies, and then it takes around, depending on the size of the project, 5 to 15 months to execute. I'm seeing around a mile a month of executing. We're constantly trying to shorten that time frame, but there's a lot of work that goes into undergrounding these lines. We have a detailed website, the SCE.com on TUG, and it really kind of outlines all of the activities and all the work that we do to underground these power lines.
Great. Thank you so much, Genevieve. Appreciate you coming on. The next question is from Jacqueline Iron. This is the same, it's a comment and then a question. This is the same decision-making process that you claim you have always used since 2019. So what is so new about it? Hey, thanks, Jacqueline. I think there's a couple new things, and I'll have Jude hop on as well. I'll offer a few comments. I think one of the main things that is new is the new thresholds that we're using. As we mentioned, we've been seeing more extreme weather conditions in terms of lack of precipitation, higher wind speeds. Just this month alone, I think we have four fires burning in Southern California, and it's May. So we're seeing more extreme weather, and so that has caused us to adjust our thresholds. And so that's part of the new, that's why we're doing these community meetings, to make sure everyone is prepared, given that we expect a difficult summer ahead as it relates to the weather. So Jude, do you want to touch on anything else that I may have missed?
I don't really have much else to add, except to say you can look at our technical paper, which kind of lays out what we're doing and the rationale and the formulas.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is from Luis Gomez Lares, and I'm going to have my colleague Rafael come on again. Why doesn't part of your vegetation management include brush grazing sheep? One comment I will make is we have used goats up in some of our vegetation areas, but I'll let Rafael speak more to that.
Right, and that's definitely a really a good asset that we can use, right? But it's really more for our rural areas. Typically, when we are near a neighborhood, it takes a lot for us to use these goat grading, the goats to graze our areas here. We do have to put in barriers. We have to bring in a couple of anglers, right? The coyotes and wildlife might get into some of our sheep, right? And that's what we don't want. So it's a bit more impactful to use some of these the goats in our residential neighborhoods rather than in rural areas. And you got to remember, the goats don't know the difference between like a native plant or something that's fire resistant. They're gonna pretty much eat everything. And we also want to be good, environmental stewards and keep our native plants that's gonna help us, with our erosion or anything else that we want to preserve there.
Great, thank you so much. The next is a comment from Therese. The Inland Empire, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties, where we have had experienced many wildfires and lengthy PSPS outages up to 8 days to mitigate possible wildfire outbreaks. You have no idea of the severe misery and havoc of displaced residents, nor the losses of health, meds, food that was inflicted on so many residents last winter by cutting the power by 8 days for 8 days. You need better mitigation strategies. This is the only tool you use. It's not working. First of all, Therese, on behalf of all of us, we do not want this to be a hardship, and so that is why we are doing these sessions, to provide resources to help it be less of a hardship. We know based on the forecast that we're going to have extreme weather conditions, and so PSPS events are likely. Please, I hope as for all the residents and customers. Rosa went through some tools and resources that are available to help make the impact of a PSPS event less consequential. We are doing everything we can to minimize the duration and frequency, but we do need the community's help to be prepared. And so please make sure that you look at the resources that we've made available, the website. We want to try to get through this together as a community. The next question I think we already answered is there service available to assist us with clearing brush? I think we responded to that one. The next question is, when our power goes out, this is from Al G. When our power goes out, our cell service is down. How can we get messages from you when we have no service? So I'll touch on this, but then I may ask Rosa if you have more to add. Telecommunication companies are classified as critical infrastructure, and they must also maintain service continuity during a planned or unplanned power outage, including emergencies, similar to PSPS. The California Public Utilities Commission mandates that facilities-based telecom providers have at least 72 hours of backup power at critical sites, supporting emergency communications and 911, and also setting up a baseline for network resiliency. So industry best practices expect telecom providers to design networks with redundancy, backup power, and operational capabilities to minimize impacts of outages on customers. SCE doesn't regulate the telecom providers, but we closely coordinate with them before and during PSPS events, offering them advance notification up to 3 days so that they're prepared. So the regulatory authority over the telecommunication companies is the California Public Utilities Commission. We definitely play a role in helping collaborate with them and providing them information because we want them to be prepared as well in the event of a PSPS event. But Rosa, what did I miss? Is there anything else that you can add that might be of help for that question?
The other thing we also, if needed at the community resource centers or the community crew vehicles, in PSPS, if customers can go to those locations to charge their devices as well, if they don't already have portable power batteries at home.
Great, thank you, Rosa. Yeah, we typically deploy resources out in the field when there is a PSPS event, and they all have charging stations.
Yes.
Great. Okay, next question. Again, I'm trying to use the ones that are most upvoted. So if you see a question you like, click the arrow and we'll upvote here. Is from Barbara. Are there maps for each county high wildfire threat areas based on vegetation conditions? Is there a map showing the 116 resource centers? So I'm not sure who best is to take this, if this is Jude or Rosa. And do either of you have some insights on this question that you can help with?
Well, I can start. And the second part of it is, are there maps of the resource centers? When we go live with our outage map, there will be a map of the resource centers that are open. We won't open all 116 simultaneously, but we'll open them near to the location. But I realize that was Rosa's part, but can you repeat the beginning of the question?
Sure. Are there maps for each county high wildfire threat areas based on vegetation conditions?
So we have our high fire risk area map closely resembles the CPUC's high fire risk area map, which is different from there is another form of high fire mapping that is done by the insurance agencies, which are different. And I know this is extremely confusing. If you want to look at our circuitry and filter for our high fire risk area map, you can go to this website we have, which is called DRPEP, drpep.sce.com, and we'll put it into the chat. But that shows all our circuitry, and you can kind of toggle through and look at where your circuit is, and you can put a filter on to see if you're in a high fire risk area. And during our PSPS events, you can see whether you're in the high fire risk area or downstream, meaning when I showed you that map of the county where the substation was in the high fire risk area and the underground neighborhood wasn't, you can see where the high fire risk area is relative to your circuitry.
Great. Anyone else have anything to add to that one? Okay. All right, next question is from Mark O. My power line down from the pole crosses over a large tree of an uphill neighbor. That tree is growing into the power line. Is there an SE procedure for me to report that the neighbor needs to trim their tree? Raphael, I'm going to have you take this one if you don't mind.
So once again, we do have a safe tree contact on our website that you can reach out to us on and just kind of give us a brief description on what the issue is, and we will send one of our certified arborists out to do to perform an inspection on the property and determine whether or not that power line is like, sometimes there's service drops that run through them. Those typically have a little bit of insulation on them, and if there's no strain or abrasion, then they're okay to kind of be on the edge of that vegetation. But if there is an issue, we will mitigate appropriately there and make the proper contacts with the homeowner, and also get an environmental clearance on all the work that we perform.
Great, thank you. We have just a couple minutes left, so let me scan a couple others. Genevieve, I'm going to have you take this one. It's from Luis. Are there any plans to prioritize undergrounding the power lines in the Eaton Fire area and surrounding impacted neighborhoods? Pasadena Water and Power is committed to undergrounding their grid in that area. Is SE going to match or exceed that commitment?
Yes, we do have a detailed plan for the Altadena area where we're planning to underground approximately 63 miles. I believe published was a link showing the grid hardening page. If anyone was curious to see where we're planning to underground as part of the Altadena area, it shows all of the circuits in that location.
Okay, thank you. There was a question here about transmission from Jacqueline. So let me bring this up and I'll have Jude answer this. How are you hardening your transmission lines as opposed to your distribution lines? Are you installing covered conductor on your transmission circuits? Are you undergrounding them? So Jude, that one?
Yeah. So the short answer is that we are mainly using covered conductor on neighborhood power lines, on distribution lines. For larger transmission lines, we use other safety measures, one of which is the proactive splice shunting, which means that we install additional pieces of wire before lines fail due to age, weather, or contact from an object, and that reduces wildfire ignition risk. So we're doing that work where we're installing a shunt over existing splices to provide mechanical and electrical reinforcement. And we've incorporated enhanced transmission system design into our standards for high fire risk areas. The increased line clearance will help mitigate drivers for ignition on sub-transmission lines. We're also working on transition spans, modifying lines where there's a risk of line-to-line contact. So we're doing kind of a lot of projects to protect and harden our grid, our transmission system as well. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Jude. Appreciate it. I'm going to try to touch on just a couple more here because we are winding down on time. I'll give this one to Jude. I think you have the response. This is from Roxana Meza. Does SE conduct outreach or partner with county agencies such as IHSS, DBH, or programs serving elderly and medically vulnerable individuals to help connect eligible customers with these resources in regard to customer backup programs? Actually, Rosa, you might be better equipped to answer that one. So Rosa, do you mind coming on?
Thank you, Christy. Yes, we definitely partner with local agencies. And we also leverage existing community networks like IHSS, independent living centers, and we do have partnerships with multiple community-based organizations to help identify and support our AFN populations, especially around emergency preparedness, and then connecting them with resources that are available to them.
Okay, thank you. We had one question come in from Mark Porter. It's a longer question. In the interest of time, I'm going to have my colleague Angela Babcock come on, just quickly summarize and provide a response. So Angela, do you mind coming on?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for that question. Mark mentioned the Bane fire that's happening out in Riverside County near the Santa Ana River bed. And I think that he's referring to a project called the Riverside Transmission Reliability Project that Southern California Edison is currently constructing out there. It's a 10-mile double circuit 220 kV transmission line project. And like all transmission infrastructure, RTIP is designed and is being constructed with safety, reliability, and wildfire mitigation as the primary requirements. Transmission structures and conductor configurations have to comply with the CPUC's General Order 95, which establishes rigorous design, clearance, structural strength, and wildfire mitigation standards for all of the overhead lines that are built statewide. And we also have our wildfire mitigation plans, which are required, that further document the company's system-wide progress in risk reduction, reinforcing the practices that guide how new lines are being constructed and designed and permitted and operated, while balancing safety, reliability, and affordability for our customers. And the project, after extensive environmental review, was approved by the CPUC. So we're moving forward on a CPUC approved project. And one of the concerns that Mr. Porter brought up are the ability for fire crews to work when there are transmission lines in the area. Power lines are known and managed as an aviation hazard throughout the state. Most of the
transmission lines throughout the state traverse Tier 3 fire hazard areas, and Wildfire Aviation routinely operates in those wire environments. And the wildland aerial suppression forces are well aware of hazards and precise locations of all of our overhead lines. We communicate with those folks who are doing the aerial operations, and those pilots can communicate their plans and drop safely within our infrastructure. So thank you for that question. And if there are any other questions regarding the RTRP, you can go to the website SCE.com/RTRP.
Great, thank you, Angela, for joining us. We are at time. I'll close with one question that came in from Gerald Stone. It says, when decisions are made to cut power in an area, are there county or other government agencies contacted and informed so that vulnerable populations can be considered and protected? Yes, absolutely, Gerald. We're in touch typically at least 72 hours in advance, working with local county officials and agencies to help provide resources for our most vulnerable customers. So appreciate the question. All right, we will move to the next slide, which is helpful information and resources. Thank you for the wonderful questions, covered a variety of topics. So displayed on the screen now are several helpful resources. Additional materials will be emailed to the registered attendees, including a link to the presentation and a recording of the meeting. I want to thank you again for taking your time out of your busy schedule to join us on a Thursday evening to be with us and learn more about our grid hardening work and how to be prepared in the event of a public safety power shutoff. Again, we understand that PSPS outages have had significant impact, especially on some communities. We recognize the challenges and hardships that these outages have caused, and we're committed to supporting you through these difficult times. Your resilience and cooperation are invaluable as we strive to enhance our services and ensure your safety. On this next slide, I just want to thank you again. This concludes our meeting. We will post the recording on our website in a few days at sce.com/wildfire, as well as other information and resources. On the screen, you can see that there's a contact email. If you have more questions, please feel free to email us. We appreciate you joining us this evening. Thank you again, and please have a wonderful evening.